When anime fans talk about aura, the same names always come up, right? You have Gojo, Madara, Sukuna, Sungjin Woo, those types of powerful shonen characters. Characters that completely change the atmosphere the second they appear on the screen, right? But hidden among all those monsters of characters is a high school basketball player known as Daiki Aomine, a guy with no superpowers, no magic, no transformations, just basketball, and somehow he feels just as intimidating as characters capable of destroying entire cities. Every time Aomine steps onto the court, the game instantly changes. Not because you think he's going to win, you already know that. You watch because you want to see just how impossible he's going to make basketball look. Every dribble, every technique, every shot, every possession feels like an entire different event. And that's why more than 10 years later, Aomine is still one of the coldest characters anime has ever produced. But that raises an interesting question. What actually creates aura? Because isn't it glowing eyes? Is it a flashy soundtrack? And it is definitely not just being overpowered, right? It is definitely something else. Aura is so much more than just being overpowered, right? Aura is probably the most overused word in anime today. Anytime a character gets an amazing entrance, people call it aura. Anytime a character wins a fight, it's aura. A cool pose maybe? Aura. But that's not what aura actually is. Aura is about presence. It's the ability for a character to completely dominate the audience's attention before they've even done anything relatively important. It's that feeling in your stomach when someone walks into a room and suddenly everything feels different. Great animation can enhance aura, music can enhance aura, lighting can enhance aura, but they can't create aura. Real aura comes from storytelling. The audience has to believe that this character deserves the level of attention, and that's exactly why Aomine works. His aura wasn't built in one episode. It was built across the entire story of Kuroko's basketball. There are 4 reasons why Amine's aura is hard above everyone else in sports anime. The first point I want to talk about is Aomine's build-up. The smartest thing Kuroko's basketball ever did was making us fear Aomine before we even truly met him. Long before he plays a serious game, everyone talks about him. Kisei respects him, Kuroko regrets losing him, the Generation of Miracles acknowledge him as their ace. Even Kagami knows this is the player he has to surpass. Every conversation makes Aomine feel less like a person and more like a legend. By the time he finally appears, our expectations are through the roof. And what does he do? He sleeps on a rooftop. He skips practice. He looks completely uninterested. He's not trying to impress anyone, right? Because he doesn't necessarily have to. His reputation in the build-up already did all the work for his own character. The next point I would like to bring up is Aomine's confidence. One of the biggest differences between confidence and arrogance is whether you can actually back up what you're saying. Of course, Aomine can. We all remember the quote, "The only one who can beat me is me." That line isn't memorable because it's cocky. It's memorable because at that point in the story, it's true. Every movement reinforces that confidence. His hands stay in his pockets. He barely reacts to opponents. He smiles while everyone else is panicking. He treats games like entertainment instead of competition. Nothing feels forced. He's completely comfortable because he genuinely believes no one belongs on the same court or conversation as him. Confidence like that is contagious. The audience starts believing in it as well. The third point I want to bring up is Aomine's play style on the court. One of the biggest reasons Aomine has so much aura per se is because of the way he plays basketball. Most players in Kuroko no Basket have a defined style, right? Minarima relies on the shooting, Murasakibara dominates with his size, and Akashi controls the game with precision. Even though they're all incredibly talented, you can usually predict what's going to happen with them on the court. Aomine is the complete opposite of that. Every possession feels unpredictable. 1 second he's crossing someone over, the next he's taking an impossible shot from behind the backboard, and somehow the ball still goes in the hoop. His play style doesn't feel rehearsed, it feels like pure instinct. And I think that's what makes him so exciting to watch as viewers. We never know what he's going to do next, which means every time he touches the ball, all of our attention is on him. But what really elevates his game is how effortless he makes it look. He's just screaming after every basket or celebrating every highlight. Half the time he looks bored, he looks uninterested. He casually walks back on defense, smiles at his opponents, and acts like everything he's doing is just simple and easy. That confidence makes every play feel even more disrespectful. It isn't just that he's better than everyone else, it's the fact that he knows he's better than everyone else. and by the time he enters the zone, it feels less like a power-up and more like the moment he finally decides to stop holding back. And finally, the biggest point on why Aomine is the most auraful character, if that's even a word, in anime, is the tragedy behind his character. If Aomine was only a cocky basketball prodigy, he'd still be a fun character. But what makes him unforgettable is the loneliness behind all that confidence. At the beginning of his journey, Aomine genuinely loves basketball. He played it because it's fun, and he loved competing with his friends, but eventually became too good. Every game ended the same way. Every opponent fell short. The excitement that made him fall in love with basketball slowly disappeared. That's why his famous quote, "The only one who can beat me is me," hits so much harder once you understand his character. At first it sounds arrogant, but later it feels almost depressing. He's not bragging, he's admitting that no one could give him a challenge that he's been searching for. That changes the way you see him in every scene. His impossible plays aren't just there to show off, they're the actions of someone desperately looking for a reason to enjoy the game again. And that's why his match against Kagami is so satisfying. For the first time in years, Aomine isn't smiling because he's dominating someone. He's smiling because someone is finally pushing him to his limit. That emotional layer is what separates Aomine from so many other cool characters. His aura isn't just built on confidence or flashy moments. It's built on a character who's searching for the love of basketball he thought he'd lost. Lots of anime characters have cool entrances, lots of anime characters have iconic quotes, and lots of anime characters have unforgettable fights, but very few characters have aura that feels completely natural. Aomine never needs to announce that he's the strongest. The story already convinces us that he is the best. Every scene before his arrival, every reaction from other characters, every impossible play, every quiet smile, it all builds towards one thing: his presence. That's why people still talk about Aomine over a decade later. Not because he had the craziest powers, not because he was the main character, but because Kuroko no Basketball understood something that so many stories forget. Aura isn't something you give a character, it's something you earn a character. And Daiki Aomine earned every single second of aura that he has.